And it is my pleasure to introduce Marion Larson, who will be speaking with us this morning. And the title is A Mystical Path to Closer Union with God. And Marion, welcome. We look forward to having you share your experiences with us in your spiritual walk. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marion.
Thank you, Brother John. I am just so happy to see you all.
Hi, Marion.
Hello, hello, hello. You're all very important to me and in my spiritual walk. So I'm so happy that we are all gathered here together. And I want to say that this talk is about how a mystical path called Sufism, in coordination with my Christian faith, has brought me nearer to God. And Sufism is a branch of Islam, which I have been taught is a universal wisdom of Eastern and Western mysticism. Mysticism is a spiritual path into the mystery of God. And mystics, are you having a hard time hearing me? Is it all right? And mystics are given the gift of closer union with God that they then can manifest through God's grace. They manifest God's love, harmony, and beauty. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I'm not an expert on Sufism. I'm just talking about how it was transmitted and taught to me and how I experience it. But to bring you into how I began with it, I have to give you a little bio. And that is that when I was born, our family was living in New York City, and we had a beloved caretaker. And in my 40s, she told me something that I had forgotten. And that was that when I was 2.5, starting was when I was 2.5, as we walked by St. Patrick's Cathedral, I would pull on her skirt to take me into St. Patrick's. And when she told me that, I had a flashback of the times I stood there as really little more than a baby. And I would look at St. Patrick's Cathedral and I would see devout people kneeling at the shrines, praying, women with their little kerchiefs, and people lighting candles devoutly. And I would smell the incense from past masses, and I would love the semi-darkness of the church. Now, I couldn't have told you at 2.5 that I loved that sense of mystery and peace and everything that came through my senses, but it set the stage for my whole spiritual journey. And as I grew up, I wanted so to understand more about this mystery. And so the questions I asked was what was true and what wasn't true. What was true and what wasn't true. That's all I knew how to do. And it was very dualistic, but I didn't know any better, right? And so it took me through 3 years of Chicago Divinity School. And I met and married my beloved husband, Larry Larson, and there's his son sitting right there. And we have 3 children together. I don't know where Hannah is, but Hannah is here too, and Sarah. And there's Hannah, and they are the light of my life. And I have 7 grandchildren that I'm equally proud of. They're all just wonderful people, and I hope Sarah will join us soon if she can. Anyway, that search took me into an experience that added to it beautifully. My husband went over to Zurich, Switzerland for 2.5 years, to Zurich, Switzerland, to study at the C.G. Jung Institute there, to become a psychological analyst, all right? So he was an Episcopal priest and a Jungian therapist, and he was absolutely an amazing companion on the spiritual and religious and psychological journey. And so when we got back from there, Larry was an analyst during the week, and on Sunday he would help at churches, right? He would assist at churches. And I have to mention, I was baptized and confirmed an Episcopalian. All right, so that was my orientation. And for me, what I worked at was I became the director of adult religious education on Sundays. And I taught classes because of my divinity school background. I taught classes and I developed the curricula. All right. Well, we continued to do that until we retired and came to Sarasota in 1997 to be near Larry's. And there's my Sarah. She's down at the bottom of the page. Hello, darling. That's my third child. And she lives in Madison, Wisconsin. And Lawrence lives in Naperville, Illinois. And Hannah lives in Seattle. And so I'm so blessed today. I'm just bouncing with joy inside. Anyway, so we retired here to be near Larry's parents. Mine had already died. And unfortunately, Larry died of cancer in 2004. And I lost a wonderful companion. So I kind of bopped around for a while with various churches and settled at St. Boniface. And many of you are beloved parishioners there that I know well. And I loved St. Boniface and continue to love it. And I'm active in the healing mission and in the Center for Spiritual Transformation, which has organized these talks, and also in the Sunday book group. All right. So that was wonderful. But at a certain point, about 2006, I came to a wall. I didn't know why, but I just stopped growing. Have you ever had periods like that? And I was feeling very frustrated because I love to learn and grow. And incidentally, or as we would say, synchronistically, I met a woman at a meeting who's talked about a Sufi community named Rising Tide here in Sarasota, right? And so I went and I just loved it. Just loved it. I went to a Sunday service called a universal worship service. And I felt my heart and soul open, and I began to breathe. And I want to share with you on the share screen. I'm going to now share a screen with you and talk about two prayers that I heard that meant a great deal to me. And I don't know how to minimize the pictures here, but anyway, I'll read it. You read it along with me. Toward the first prayer in the service is toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the master, the spirit of guidance. The word that struck me so was the only being, because until that time, I had believed that God's transcendence was above creation, and that gave a duality. But here, for one of the first times, I heard the only being. And I intuited that everything lives in God. But we can't get there through that sensibility through concepts. Thinking is fine up to a certain point. And then concepts become a box that boxes us in, that boxes everything in. So I learned as I began to grow with this prayer that we needed to go into our hearts and souls. And that would take us deeper into a deeper sensibility than concepts could give us. So mystics, not that they don't like using their minds, they do, but at a certain point, they sacrifice that and we go into a deeper place of heart and soul. And that allows our ego to let go of our ego and come into a higher ego that's united with God. So then the next one I want to show you is the next prayer, which was in the service, the universal service that we'll read together. Most gracious Lord, Master and Savior of humanity, we greet thee in all humility. Thy light is in all forms, thy love in all beings. Allow us to recognize thee in all thy holy names and forms. As Rama, as Krishna, as Buddha, let us know thee as Abraham, as Solomon, as Zarathustra, as Moses, as Jesus, as Mohammed, and in many other names and forms known and unknown to the world. O messenger, Christ, prophets of God, may the message of God reach far and wide, illuminating and making the whole of humanity as one single familyhood in the parenthood of God. What struck me there is the agreement of all the prophets. We don't look for the disagreement, which often evangelists point out very clearly, my religion is better than yours. As Christ says, Jesus says in the Gospel of John, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Islam says we have the last and greatest prophet. So there's contention and separation in the streams of evangelism. This looks at the agreement where we agree, all right? And that was such a relief and a release to me, all right? So look at how divisions have created the evil of separation, hostility, suffering, and warfare. The devil, the word devil is based on the word division. So I began to look at my faith in terms of and also, not either or. This helped open my heart to God. And this agreement, Richard Rohr, who is an author that we have read in our book group, he's a Christian author, and he wrote of this agreement, the perennial tradition or wisdom tradition points to recurring themes and truths within all the world religions. Any truth that keeps recurring and gathers humanity's positive energy, don't you love that? Positive energy is called wisdom, and most assuredly has to be from the one Holy Spirit. Do you hear the agreement and the unity here? A different emphasis altogether, which liberated my heart from what is true and what is untrue. All right? So now I kept attending the classes, and I learned a great deal. On Tuesday night, there were classes that were taught on this. And I would go to St. Boniface on Sunday and come to the Wednesday classes on Tuesday. And I learned that Mohammed, that Sufi, that the teachers of Sufism started in Egypt and came through India and ended with Mohammed because they all agreed on the mystical union with God and how to approach that. So they settled under the umbrella of Islam, but they had been in existence for thousands of years. And they were called Sufi because they wore woolen robes, and the word for wool in Arabic is suf. So we move on to Inayat Khan, who was born in 1882 and died in 1927 in India. And he came from a family of famous musicians and music teachers. And he was very gifted in playing this instrument called the veena, Inayat Khan. But at the end of his teens, he heard a calling to follow a spiritual path. And he kept dreaming of this face of his guide, a face, kept dreaming. And so he left his family and went out to find this face. Now, how about that for taking a risk? And he found him. And after several years, the guide recognized him as being a brilliant teacher, could be a brilliant teacher and prophet. So he said to him, I want you to go abroad, and I want you to harmonize the East and the West with your music. Hear the harmony? Hear this theme coming through? And also with Sufism. So Inayat Khan, at the time of his death, he had established many Sufi communities in America and throughout Europe. Now, these communities were a little bit more universal than the Muslim communities that had Sufism in the Mideast and in Turkey and Iran. They stayed more closely tied to Muslim, but Inayat Khan made it more universal, combining the East and the West. And he wrote those prayers we just read. And so he said, it doesn't matter what religion you belong to. This path makes you better at whatever religion you choose. So there's the universality. And so I never worried about becoming a Muslim. I could be happily a Christian and a Sufi at the same time. Now, I want to talk a little bit about rising tide. David Less, whose Sufi name is Shahabuddin, studied under Inayat Khan's son for many years and decades. And he was the one who founded Rising Tide here in Sarasota in 1997. And his Sufi name means Comet of Religions. And here he is, and I've studied under him for decades now. 14 years I've studied under him. I love his eyes. He's the best teacher I think I've ever had. And so now I'm going to stop the share, and we're going to go back to the screen. Here we go again. And so Sufism is transmitted from guide to student. All right, that's how it's transmitted. And so if you want a guide, you have to ask the guide you would like. And if the guide thinks it's a good fit, they agree to it. And I chose a wonderful guide by the name of Khadijah Alice McMullen. And I had number of Christian spiritual guides before that. So this was not anything really new to me. So how do you work with a guide? You work with a guide by the guide has individual sessions with you. She or he may teach classes and give retreats for you. All right. Those are the ways you study with a guide. And one of the things that was so really a learning curve for me in Sufism was that to open the heart and soul more to God, you need to go into more a sense of the vibration and energy of God. The vibration and energy of God. Now, we have that in the healing mission where we're transmitting energy, God's healing energy. And you have it to some extent in contemplation and meditation, where we are mindfully in the presence of God. But in Sufism, we're saturated with learning more and more how to vibrate energetically with God's energy. And that is our basic, essential component of life. So when we miss that in our worship service, we're missing a vital medium and way to God. Now, how is that done? I want to go into this. The guide will meet with you and maybe twice a month and give you in between practices to practice to help you grow into the higher self, to heal and let go of what you need to, gain detachment where needed, but most of all, to completely open one's heart and soul, my essential nature, to God, which is where it's most easy to connect to God. And the practices are, I want to mention 3 practices. One is breath. Breath is obviously an energy form, right? And you do different breaths. The guide gives you different breaths to work with to help you move into further union with God. All right. And one of the breaths I do every day is called cleansing breaths, which unite me with the 5 elements of nature: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. It's called a subtle energy. And I breathe different breaths on those for those 5 elements. And I breathe out the impurities of those elements and breathe in the purity. And as I said, for Sufis, nature is our scripture. Nature is our scripture. So we're coming energetically into nature's elements. The next one is sound. And sound, you all know the word mantras, right? Using mantras to energetically attune to God. And I want to say that in Islam, there are 99 names of God. And each of the names of God is a quality that God has, right? So let's say I come to my guide and I say, I've been so confused this week. And she said, all right, I want you to say the mantra, the light of God. I want you to say it 33 times, twice a day. And I'm to say it into the heart and soul. But I don't say it in English. I say it in Arabic. Now, why? There are certain languages that are considered holy by the practitioners of their faith. For Buddhism and Hinduism, it's Sanskrit. For Judaism, it's Hebrew. For Orthodox Christianity, it's Greek. For the Muslim world, it's Arabic. And for the Roman Catholic world, it's Latin. And a lot of people had a hard time letting go of Latin because they intuited that it was a holy language. They didn't want to go into English. So we say our mantras in Arabic, all right? So the light of God is Yanur, all right? Now, I want you to say just say in your heart, and this may not affect you at all, but I want you to say in your heart and aim it toward your heart, the light of God, the light of God, the light of God, What happens to me is I go back into the concepts because I've talked about God so much. But I don't have such association to the Arabic, which is Yanur. Yanur. Let's say that. Yanur. 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 Do you hear the expansiveness? If you pay attention to the rhythm, the quality, the sound of that word, it has an expansiveness to it. Your heart just goes out and you get that mantra on a different level than just saying the light of God. So that's sound. And the last one, of course, is movement. Now, you all know movement as energy, right? You probably all have heard of the whirling dervishes who are Sufis, right? And their skirts whirl and they stand on one leg and they wear a rectangular hat, all right? The rectangular hat stands for the death of the ego, the tomb of the ego. Standing on one foot and whirling represents being centered in God. So that's the whirling dervishes. At rising tide, when we don't have the COVID to contend with, we have what's called dances of peace. And we get together once a month, and Denise, you've done them there, and you like them a lot. And what we do is we get in a circle, all right? And the musicians, the singer who's going to chant the mantras, stand in the middle, along with maybe a guitarist and a drummer. All right, so this is sound. And we start chanting the mantra. And I want to tell you, all of these practices are called zikr in Arabic, which means remembrance. The mystical path is throughout the day to remember God in various practices, to keep us centered in God mystically. And this is even stronger when it's done corporately. There's an energy to the corporate that's powerful. And meanwhile, talking of corporate, in the book group, we were reading The Universal Christ. We were reading Thomas Merton, Henry Nouwen. We were reading Matthew Fox, all of it pointing to what? Unity in God, the universal Christ, all right? And I soon learned with a guide that what had caused my block was being too much in my damn head. Too much, really, too many dualistic concepts, right? And that I needed to get into unity. I learned that was my wall, and I have to keep watching for it because I do love thinking. But anyway, I have learned through 14 years of this practice where I need to place my attention. So we do the dancing, which incorporates sound, breath, sound, and movement. And we go around the circle, hand over hand, like this. And we move around the circle and we look in each other's lives and smile, look in each other's eyes and smile. And what a beautiful way of expressing love the Lord thy God with all thy mind, heart, and soul, thy neighbor as thyself, through these movements of dances for peace. And in the last thing I want to talk about, movement, we even use movement when we are praying or a phrase or a mantra of God. And I'm going to take the mantra, there is nothing but God. All right. La ilaha il Allahu. La ilaha il Allahu. Now, I'm going to move with this. The left side represents the physical in us. The right side represents the spiritual side in us. The looking down represents going into our heart and soul, where we find God. And up here is the transcendent, which represents the transcendent God. And this movement symbolizes the wholeness. All right, the integration of everything. So this is how it's going to look. La ilaha il Allahu. La ilaha il Allahu. La ilaha il Allahu. And you do that deeply in your heart and soul, moving ever deeper, and you can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel moving deeper into the heart and soul and connecting with God. You feel it through your whole being. All right. So that's all I want to say about practices. We could go on for the whole day about that, but never mind. We're going to go to my final experience. Well, no, we're going to say this. When you give conscious energetic attunement to God's energy, you can travel much more quickly on the spiritual path if you're doing it consciously. And this energetic attunement, and remember that Inayat Khan was a musician. So this energetic attunement gives another level of meaning, the essential level of energy we all share with God. To Jesus is saying, abide in me and I in you. Think of it at the energetic level, the vibrational level. It's marvelous. It's powerful. So the last thing I want to share with you is a very personal experience. And I was blessed to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem in 2011. And before I left, I had this dream, a little bit like Inayat Khan, but that he dreamt of his guide. Well, in my dream, Jesus came to me and said, I'll see you on the oldest road. I don't know. Okay. Where's the oldest road? Am I going to miss you if I don't recognize the oldest road? But that was my ego talking, of course. But this dream kept coming and coming. And one day in Jerusalem, we were given a free day. All right. So I decided I wanted to do the Stations of the Cross by myself. All right. And I ended up in the second station of the cross, which had a church built on it because there was a monastery that owned that church. All right. So I came into the church, and this is the station where Jesus is tortured by the Centurion. He has the crown on his head, and the crossbeam is put on his shoulders. Right. And so I look around, I'm by myself, and I notice a door going downstairs into the basement. I thought, well, I'll go see what that's like. So I did, and I saw this mosaic on the wall, all right? And I was looking at this mosaic, and the light from the basement ceilings, the lights from the basement ceilings were sort of shining on this mosaic. And I was just looking at the shining. Nobody was there. And all of a sudden, Christ's presence came out of the mosaic. And I was, it was so powerful. And the first thing I saw was his divinity. Was the power and the majesty of his divinity, but he looked a mess, of course. And I didn't understand why that's the first thing that came to me. And he intuitively said to me, he said, you're seeing this because I want you to know the power of what I put aside for love of you. The power and the majesty I put aside for love of you. And then as I took that in, and and the vulnerability that he opened himself to, the ultimate suffering, the horrible suffering. I looked into his eyes and I saw the most profound unconditional love. Now, I had experienced that to some extent before, but I had never experienced the power of that unconditional love. And it wasn't just for me. I had been given the grace of the eyes to see it, but it was for all of us, every single living thing in the whole world and beyond. And then as I was looking, and of course I cry when I experience this kind of intensity, I felt something else. I felt an incredible, tender intimacy, an intimacy of tender intimacy, which I had longed for my whole life and found in moments. Yes. But this came in waves, just waves and waves of intimate tenderness until I couldn't stand anymore and I fell flat on my face in a cruciform. And I just stayed with this intimate tenderness. Now, I have to tell you, I still could feel myself, that wasn't completely absorbed, but I was totally absorbed in these waves of intimate tenderness. And I think that's what I had experienced at St. Patrick's Cathedral when I was 2.5. And then, as I was in this experience, I heard voices up in the church, right? And they were German. And the guide started coming down to the basement, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to get up. But I couldn't walk, so I got up and just sort of leaned against the wall, still filled with this experience. And he gave a little lecture to his tour, and then they all looked around and went back up. And something drove me to ask him, do you speak English? And he said, yes, I do. I said, could you tell me what you just said? He said, yes. He said, one of the things I said was, this is the oldest road in Jerusalem. If you look on the floor, they're very ancient stones. And they were the stones that were put on top of the original Via Dolorosa. And they're about 150 AD, and because a church was built on top of it, they were never changed out. And I just thought, my dream has come true. And it confirmed the whole experience for me. Hi, Eloise. And I don't think I could have had this journey and come full circle if I hadn't had the combination of Christianity and Sufism together to give me eyes to see. And that's the end of my talk.
Marion, thank you so much for sharing your spiritual journey with us. Now is going to be the opportunity for you all to comment and ask questions. And we'll use, again, as I said earlier, the Zoom application for raising your hand. And what this allows me to do is to see the order in which people are asking to speak, and then I will call upon you to speak and share your thoughts with Marion or your questions. So if you'd like to talk with Marion, please raise your hand using the...
They're going to have to unmute.
Yes,
I don't know that everybody knows that. In order to talk, you're going to have to unmute so we can hear you.
thank you, Marion. So please go ahead and use Zoom to raise your hand. It's reactions. You click on reactions and then you'll see the raise hand. There we go. Tara, go ahead.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Tara.
I'm just wondering if in the chat you could share the recording, the link to the recording. I have some friends that would couldn't be here today, and they would love to know how to listen to this later.
John.
Yeah, Tara will get that out to you. It's on our website. It'll eventually be on the website. Take a week or two to have it put there, but I will bring that up and put it into the chat. Or Michael, can
Thank
you do
you.
that if you
And
would?
Mom, that was an incredible story. I can't believe I've never heard that before. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're so welcome, sweetie.
Brother John, just so everybody knows, our website is currently under construction. We're working with a new company to upgrade our website. So we won't have the actual video available for most probably a week or so. And until we get under construction up and running, it may be a couple of weeks. So ask you to be patient with us in the process.
What I can do in the meantime is, Marion, I will include you when I send the link or the actual file out. I'll send that to you as well, and people can contact you, Marion, if and you could email it to them.
Okay, thank you.
And Helen has her hand raised. Helen, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Marion.
Hi, Helen.
I loved your talk. And I would just like to share with everyone how Marion touched me. When Doug's mother died, it was a very difficult time. And Marion called and I just started sobbing so uncontrollably and I just couldn't breathe. And she took me through a breathing exercise. And this goes back to what you were saying about breathing. So I was able to do that and it calmed me and it just helped me so much. And just getting to know Marion has been such a joy for me. And I'm so thankful for her.
Thank you so much. We work at the Healing Mission together, and it's a blessing to have you in my life too, Helen.
Thank you, Marion.
And Donna has raised her hand. Donna.
Marion, I so enjoyed your talk.
Thank you, sweetie.
Wow, you are such a powerful teacher to me and to many. Another word that comes to mind besides powerful is humble. You work so hard in such a humble way, and you continue on your journey of growth and learning, as you mentioned, every day. You're always on to something and learning something new. And I just so appreciate your teaching me, befriending me, and there are myriad ways that I have grown primarily because of you.
Thank you so
And
much, honey. I feel the
love
same way about you. You know that.
Thank you. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And Larry, welcome.
Where is Larry?
Yeah, hi, Mom. So obviously you and I have had many talks over the years, and sometimes I tease you for a lot of this. But you know that I love you and I respect all of it. one thing that I've always, or one recent talk that we've had that I'd like to dig into, and I think it, goes to what Donna said in many ways, is kind of the differentiation between the ego and the id, and how your spiritualism has allowed you to take on more of the id than the ego. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think it's an important revelation that you've had, and I know that I try to follow that as best I can. I don't do it very well sometimes, but I think it is one of those learnings that maybe we can all benefit from.
It's a wonderful question, honey. And I probably don't have the full answer to it, but Freud originated it, as far as I know. And what he was saying is the id is our instinctual drives and includes our sexuality. But there are instinctual drives as opposed to what the ego is, which is an outcropping of the instinctual drives. It develops from the instinctual drives. That's the ego, the conscious I, which is separate from everything else. And then the higher self moves into the great, toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, toward the one. That's the higher self. And we were very fortunate at the Center of Spiritual Transformation to take a 6-week workshop in how to move from the ego into the higher self, which is more open to hearing God's will and doing it. Does that kind of answer what you were looking for?
It does. It does. No, it just is. It's an important point that I know I've taken away from our conversations in past.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I'm glad.
Thank you, Larry. Mike, you have your hand raised.
Oh, what an inspiring presentation, Marion. The energy you just exhibited, you epitomized what you described. And this last story is very, very moving. All of it is moving, but the last story reminds me of dream interpretation and dreams in the Bible, even that many people, dreams play a major role. And I think some of us would like, I think you have to you write down the dreams or forget them, when you wake up, but the dreams play such a central role. What are our dreams telling us? I think that's important too. And I think that was just very moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Cindy, you have your hand raised. Cindy?
I do. I just want to say, Marion, that was just fantastic. I'm overwhelmed. And I wanted to point out that Ann Overbeck has had her hand up for a long time, but she isn't using the little gold hand. She's using her real hand. So I'm passing to Ann.
All right. Thank you for that, Cindy. Go ahead, Ann.
Hi, I'm not too swift on these technical things, but I'm learning. I just wanted to thank Marion so much. That was so powerful and such a powerful witness of how we can work at opening ourselves up to our higher spirit. It was just beautiful, and thank you, Marion.
Thank you. You're so welcome.
And
talk of a humble, beautiful spirit. Ann works at the Healing Mission too, and I've been privileged to work with her. And she is such a one. So I just wanted to say thank you for your inspiring example.
Love you, Marion.
Love
Thank
you too, honey.
yeah,
I think Amanda wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you. I am Dick's iPad this morning because I couldn't get my own to work. Marion, I so admire your ability to be so inclusive. But for years, I have worked so hard to make a peace with what you quoted from Jesus in the Gospel of John. No one comes to the Father but by me, which has troubled me, of course, for years. And I hear all the explanations about what the gospel writer was trying to get to in that particular quote. But of course, it bothers me to think of picking and choosing what Jesus said and what Jesus did not say. But how have you come? I love, for instance, the 99 days names for God in Islam. How have you been able to open so much to inclusivity without feeling a conflict with the very words of our scripture that are exclusive? How have you been able to come to that?
Well, it's been a long journey, first of all, Amanda. It didn't happen overnight at all. And I was a very either or kind of person, as you could tell in the beginning. So it was a long journey to inclusion. And that is the very nature of Sufism in the West. That's what Inayat Khan purposely developed and tried to emphasize, was the agreement, the oneness. And how I did it was I interpreted, just real quickly, no one comes to the Father but through me, that Jesus was talking more of the love he was proclaiming than himself in that unless we cannot come to the Father but through the path of love.
Okay. That's helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Good question.
Denise, you have your hand up. Denise?
Hi, great job, Marion. I
Thank you
missed
so
the
much.
first part because I had another commitment. So I have a quick question. Well, I hope it's a quick question, which is I feel that, at least in me, you've aroused more interest in Sufism. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The practice of Sufism. And what would you recommend for an interested person? I know there's many offerings at Rising Tide. There's many events, practices, meetings. What would you recommend for a non-Sufi Christian type person? The first thing to go to, because it seems to me like it's more like go into it participating rather than reading about it.
Well, you can do there. Inayat Khan was a brilliant teacher, and he's written many, many books. But the one I would recommend in terms of books is Inayat Khan's book called The Complete Sayings. They're pithy little sayings. They're not very long. And they're the complete sayings of Inayat Khan. There are many other books. The Book of Life by Neil Douglas Klotz, which goes into the 99 names of God. That's another good one. But in terms of going, I don't know whether they're Zooming their sessions now, but on Tuesday evenings, I think it's at 7:30 to 8:30, they're classes. And you can participate in those. I can get you the name of the person, if you would like, that would give you the Zoom site to those. But those are two good ways of beginning, Denise. I don't know how much is they're actually meeting. I can't hear you, Denise.
I believe that they are having some physical meetings. I see it on Ahura's list, or it might be on the website. I just thought some other people might have a similar interest.
Well, I would definitely look to see then, if you follow Ahura's list, the Tuesday classes from. That's how I began, honey. That's how I began, just going to the Tuesday classes.
Thank you.
And Michael, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Mary. Wonderful. Appreciate your enthusiasm, your clarity, just a tremendous presentation. But
Thank
what
you.
I wanted to do is make sure Judy Evanson got to she had been raising her hand. So Judy, I wanted to make sure you got to raise whatever issue or questions you had.
The challenge I have is in recording, I have speaker view, so I only see a few of you. So those who, I appreciate you sharing others who are raising their hands physically. Go ahead, Judy.
Unmute, honey.
I think she left the meeting.
Oh,
Oh,
well, that's a shame.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I know why, because she had to leave for our meditation group, but I'm not going to go to that today. So that's why she left.
And Donna, you have your hand raised.
I would just like to say something to Denise's point. I'm wondering, Denise is asking for more. She's hungry for more on what Marion has, really. I think I could express it as the integration between Christianity and Sufism. And I assume that's what Denise was talking about as well. I'm wondering if Marion would be willing, and if the CST would want for Marion to do more following the interest in what Marion did with us in today's presentation.
Marion is a little tired, to tell you the truth, from this talk. So the very mention of doing something else is not coming to welcoming ears. But we might find a good book, like The Knowing Heart, that we could maybe read together. You know, that would be a very good approach too.
Maybe you could facilitate a group on The Knowing Heart.
Sure.
We read it together.
Sure.
I don't want to overburden you, but just to
not
think,
quite now.
yeah,
Rate it in another few months down the road, maybe. But I don't, we'll talk about it. But thank you. I appreciate your interest. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful. It's very gratifying for me to hear.
Yeah. Michael, go ahead. You want to respond?
Yes. First of all, any suggestions that anybody has about future presentations or things that can be offered through CST, we're always interested in. And in fact, Amanda, one of the things that really intrigued me in your question is this is a natural way of dealing with our intellect and our heart. Because when we're interpreting scripture, whether it be our own Christian scriptures or the Torah in Jewish tradition, or you take any other denomination that has their sacred text, we're always interpreting. And what we do with interpretation is we're using our concepts up here. But when we're talking about what Marion was talking about today, the heart, and if you go to Julian of Norwich, she does the same thing that Sufism was talking about and that Marion was talking about, as to the power, the energy, the vitality of love. The whole reason that Julian experienced what she did about the suffering Christ was similar to what you did, Marion, which was so beautifully expressed. Looking into Julian looked into the heart of Jesus in one of her revelations. You looked into the face of Jesus, and both of you saw love. And what happens most of the times is we tend to put things up here, and we don't know how to get rid of them when we just want to experience Christ. Rita has something to add or say. I should say, not add.
Actually, it's a personal question for Marion. Considering the fact of that Greek and Latin and Arabic were all originally vernacular. I mean, we see them now as sacred language,
Mhm.
but it started out as the vernacular.
Yes.
So in your opinion, how do we make English, our vernacular, become sacred language?
I think words are based on concepts, as we know. And concepts divide and separate and analyze. So how do we make it? I think we have to leave the concept of the word and do what they do with Arabic and the other holy languages, get into the resonance of the energy and the vibration of that word as it resonates in the heart and the soul. Let's not leave out really Sufis work with the heart, the soul, and the body more. The concepts put us in boxes which limit us and God. So, yeah, I think we have to consciously then do that to our English. Does that make sense, Rita?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ron, you have your hand raised.
Marion, you have, at your high point, you had 36 people in this session. Right now, you have 29 people.
Yes.
If you look at your list of participants, if you want to see them, don't forget, swipe from right to left across your screen, and you can see all the people that you have in this session with you.
Swipe from
right to left.
Okay.
Or at the bottom of your screen, you have
at the bottom of the screen.
You have the banner, and you can see, click on participants.
Okay.
You can see the list, but you can see their faces if you swipe across your screen.
Well, I'm swiping, but nothing's much happening.
No, me either, Marion.
I don't know. I'm just trusting that they're enjoying, and I saw
they're all smiling, Marion.
They're all smiling.
Nodding and smiling.
I'm so happy for that.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you all. This kind of support where we can learn from each other is so important, I think. And I learn from you as much as I'm teaching. Yes, Doriel.
I wanted to say thank you, Marion. This was really an amazing presentation.
Oh.
You touched my heart, and I am sure you touched everybody else's. You brought us one step closer to God. Thank you. I was traveling in Turkey and got to see the whirling dervishes.
Yes.
Up front. And it was an amazing experience I have never forgotten.
Oh my. I saw it too. It was in an abandoned railway station of all places. And it was just amazing. Amazing.
It was.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody. This was really life-touching, heartfelt experience. Thank you, Marion.
Thank you so much.
Marion, again, thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it for all of the wisdom you have shared. And I'm at this time going to put up and share my screen, which has our coming events on it. So all of you can see on March 12th, Michael will be presenting Being Spiritual, To Be or Not to Be. And then in April, Amanda will share The Feminine Side of God. And again, you can see our website, which right now, unfortunately, is under construction, so it won't be a source for you, but through the St. Boniface, or you can call the number we have on the screen here for further information. We'd be glad to put you on our mailing list, and through that, you'll be able to get updates as to both our newsletter and what's happening. So I'll stop sharing that, And Michael, is there anything else that you would like to share before we close?
Just again, thank you, Marion.
You're so welcome. It was a joy to share it with you.
It's been fantastic, and may all of you just have a very energetic rest of the day.